Have you ever helped a stranger and lost everything because of it? That's exactly what happened to Layla Parker on a rainy Tuesday morning. She made a choice that cost her the interview she desperately needed, the rent money she couldn't afford to lose, and possibly her last chance at a real future. But what this shy girl didn't know was that the stranger she helped wasn't a stranger at all. It was supposed to be the day everything changed. Layla had been a night shift janitor for 3 years, invisible to everyone who passed her in hallways she'd just mopped. At 26, she still carried the weight of every opportunity she'd been too afraid to reach for. This interview was different. It had to be. Her landlord's text that morning made it clear no rent by the weekend meant no home by Monday. She stood under the bus stop shelter, clutching a folder she'd rehearsed until the pages were soft from handling. 38 minutes until the interview. Enough time. Just enough. The rain came down harder, drumming against the plastic roof above her. She checked her phone again. The landlord's message stared back. "I'll have to rent to someone else." Her hands trembled slightly. Not from the cold. From the familiar whisper she'd heard her whole life. "You're not good enough. You'll mess this up. You always do." She'd been an excellent student once. Scholarships, recommendations, an inspirational story her teachers loved to tell. But fear had stolen it all, one missed chance at a time. The shy girl who'd once believed in herself had learned to expect disappointment instead. That's when the black SUV pulled up to the curb. No warning, no headlights flashing. Just a smooth, expensive vehicle that didn't belong on this rain-soaked street at 7 in the morning. The hood popped open. Steam rose into the gray sky. A man stepped out mid-30s wearing a coat that probably cost more than her monthly rent. No panic on his face, no frustration. Just calm, as if breaking down in the rain was something he'd planned for. He pulled out his phone, frowned, looked up at her. For a moment, their eyes met. Layla turned away. Not my problem, she thought. I can't afford anyone else's emergency today. The bus rounded the corner in the distance. But then the man spoke, his voice cutting through the rain. "Excuse me, could you help me make a call?" And in that moment, this shy girl had to make an impossible choice. What she decided next would change both of their lives forever, but not in any way she could have imagined. And from all of us here, we wish you a Christmas filled with warmth, hope, and the kind of love that reminds you you're never truly alone. Layla looked at her watch. 31 minutes. The bus was 3 blocks away. The man stood beside his car, rain soaking through his expensive coat. His phone showed no signal, and there was no one else on this street. "It's all right," he said quickly. "I'll figure it out." He didn't complain, just accepted her silence and turned away. Layla stepped toward the bus. Her folder crinkled inside were copies of her resume and a cover letter she'd rewritten 17 times. Her phone buzzed. "I have 3 other people interested in the room." The bus pulled up. The doors opened, but something made her stop. Maybe it was the way he'd said, "It's all right," not entitled, just resigned. Or maybe it was remembering all the times she'd needed help and no one stopped. She turned around. "I can help you call roadside assistance," she said quietly. The man looked genuinely surprised. "You don't have to, I know." She held out her umbrella. "Here, take this. What about you? I'm already wet." She stepped into the downpour and dialed. The signal kept dropping. She had to explain the location 3 times. Behind her, the bus pulled away. Her chest tightened. That was her ride, her interview, her last real chance. 20 minutes passed before the tow truck arrived. "You were in a hurry, weren't you?" the man asked quietly. Layla glanced at her watch. The interview had started 3 minutes ago. I was, but some things matter more than being on time. His expression shifted. He reached for his pocket, then stopped. I hope someone treats you with the same kindness you showed me today. Then he climbed into the tow truck and disappeared into traffic. Layla stood alone, soaked to the skin. Her folder was ruined. Her phone showed 7 missed calls. She called back with shaking hands. Whitmore Solutions, Human Resources. This is Layla Parker. I had an interview at 8:30. I'm so sorry. You're late, Ms. Parker. I was helping someone whose car broke down. We conduct 50 interviews a week. Punctuality demonstrates respect. Please, if I could just explain, we've decided not to move forward with your application. The line went dead. Layla lowered the phone. She didn't cry. Tears didn't pay rent. Instead, she walked to the company anyway, 40 minutes in wet clothes. Maybe she could salvage this heartwarming gesture somehow. But at the gleaming lobby, the security guard, an older man named Samuel Reed, shook his head gently. The hiring manager has left for the day, miss. I just needed to try. Layla said, her voice cracking. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. Samuel handed her a tissue. Some doors close just to see whether you'll regret walking through them. I don't regret helping him. I just wish kindness didn't cost so much. Samuel nodded knowingly. The truly kind are usually the ones who've been hurt the most. They know what it feels like to need help and not get it. She checked her phone again. I need your final answer by Friday. Today was Wednesday. 2 days to find rent money, 0 job prospects. This wasn't the inspirational ending she'd hoped for, but it was the truth. She had 48 hours to save her home, but someone was watching who would change everything she thought she knew about second chances. The call came at 9:30 the next morning. Layla was sitting in the public library, the only place with free internet, filling out applications for positions she knew she wouldn't get. Waitress jobs, retail positions, anything that might produce a paycheck before Friday. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She almost declined it. Bill collectors had been calling all week. Hello? Ms. Parker, this is Whitmore Solutions. We'd like to invite you to return for a second interview. Layla's pen froze mid-word. I'm sorry, what did you say? Tomorrow morning at 9, with our executive leadership team. But I was told I thought the position had been filled. There was a brief pause. The voice on the other end sounded slightly uncomfortable. There's been a request to review our recent candidates. Are you available to attend? Yes, absolutely, thank you. Excellent. Please arrive 15 minutes early. Bring identification and your portfolio. The line disconnected. Layla sat there staring at her phone in disbelief. Beside her, an elderly woman reading a magazine glanced over. Good news, dear. I don't know, Layla whispered. I honestly don't understand what just happened. What she didn't know was that 12 floors above the city, in a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Karen Blake had just received an email that made her spine stiffen. From Office of the CEO, subject candidate review required. Please provide the complete list of all entry-level candidates interviewed yesterday, including those who were dismissed. Include your evaluation notes for each. Karen typed back immediately. May I ask the purpose of this review? The response came within seconds, no. She printed the files with sharp, irritated movements. In her 3 years as head of human resources, she'd never been questioned like this. Her system worked perfectly. Punctuality, professional presentation, polished communication. Those were the standards that built successful companies and separated serious candidates from time wasters. Being late meant lacking discipline. Excuses meant weakness. She'd built her entire career on that philosophy, and she wasn't about to second-guess it now. The next morning, Layla arrived at Whitmore Solutions 45 minutes early. She'd borrowed a blazer from her neighbor, slightly too big in the shoulders, but clean and pressed. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She'd replaced her water-damaged folder with a new one, though the contents were identical. Samuel was at the security desk again. When he saw her, his weathered face brightened with genuine warmth. "You came back." "They called me," Layla said, still confused by the whole situation. "I don't understand why." Samuel signed her in and handed her a visitor badge. Then he leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "I heard something interesting yesterday," he said. "Someone upstairs didn't ask about your resume. They asked about you as a person." "What does that mean?" He smiled knowingly. "Means somebody's finally paying attention to what actually matters." Layla took the elevator to the 12th floor, her heart hammering harder with each ascending number. The doors opened to a sleek reception area, glass walls, minimalist furniture, everything intimidatingly perfect and expensive-looking. Karen Blake was waiting, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes noticeably cool. "Ms. Parker, please follow me." They walked down a long corridor in silence. Karen's heels clicked sharply against the polished marble floor. She didn't make small talk, didn't ask how Layla was feeling or acknowledge the strangeness of this second chance. She led Layla into a conference room where 3 people sat waiting around an imposing table. "Please have a seat," Karen said, gesturing to a chair that felt designed for someone far more important. Layla sat folding her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. She recognized one of the panelists from the company website, the chief operating officer. The others introduced themselves as department heads, whose names she immediately forgot in her nervousness. Karen wasted no time. "Ms. Parker, we appreciate you returning on short notice. However, I need to address yesterday's situation with complete honesty." Layla's stomach dropped. "I understand, do you?" Karen's tone sharpened. "Because from my perspective, you demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of professional priorities. I was helping someone who needed, and that's admirable in your personal life." Karen leaned forward slightly. "But in a professional environment, we need people who understand that commitments must come first, that deadlines matter, that other people's time has value." One of the other panelists shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Karen, perhaps we should—" "Let me finish, please." Karen turned back to Layla with laser focus. "You see, Ms. Parker, kindness is lovely. It makes for heartwarming stories. But it's not listed in any job description I've ever written. What we need is reliability. Someone who shows up when they say they will. Someone who doesn't allow external circumstances to derail their professional responsibilities." Layla felt heat rise in her cheeks. She'd heard versions of this speech her entire life. "You're too soft, too easily distracted, not focused enough on what matters." "I understand your perspective," she said quietly, forcing herself to meet Karen's gaze even though everything in her wanted to look away. "Do you really? Because I'm not convinced." Karen glanced at the notes in front of her. "Your employment history shows a concerning pattern. Night shifts, temporary positions, no clear career trajectory whatsoever, and now missing a critical interview because someone needed help with their car." Each word landed like a stone, each one true, each one a piece of the story Layla had been running from for years. "I know my resume isn't impressive," Layla admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I've made choices that don't look good on paper, but I've been reliable at every single job I've had. I've never called in sick. I've never left work unfinished. Then why are you still cleaning office buildings at night instead of building a real career? The silence that followed was crushing, heavy with judgment and unspoken conclusions. Layla had no good answer. Or rather, she had too many answers, and none of them sounded like strength or ambition. Because I was afraid. Because I didn't think I deserved better. Because every time I reached for something more, that voice in my head told me I wasn't ready, wasn't good enough, would only embarrass myself by trying. I'm sorry for wasting your time, she finally said, standing up abruptly. I thought perhaps this might be different, but I can see now that I was wrong. The panelists exchanged uncertain glances. Thank you for the opportunity, Layla said, her vision blurring slightly at the edges. She wouldn't let herself cry here. Not in front of these people. I won't take up any more of your morning. She walked toward the door, each step feeling heavier than the last. The familiar weight of defeat settled over her shoulders, like a coat she'd worn too many times before. Her hand was reaching for the doorknob when it turned from the other side. The door opened. A man stepped into the conference room. Mid-30s. Composed expression. Wearing a perfectly tailored suit that suggested both wealth and power. Karen jumped to her feet so quickly her chair rolled backward. Mr. Whitmore, we weren't expecting. Layla's breath caught in her throat. It was him. The man from the rain. The stranger with the broken-down car. The person she'd helped without knowing his name. Jace Whitmore looked directly at her, and in his eyes was the same quiet recognition she'd seen that morning in the rain, only now it carried something else. Something deliberate. My apologies for the interruption, he said calmly. Please everyone sit. I believe we're just getting started. The man she'd helped wasn't who anyone thought, and what he was about to reveal would expose the truth about kindness' worth and what really matters. The room transformed instantly. Everything solid suddenly felt uncertain. Layla stood frozen by the door. Jace Whitmore, the Jace Whitmore CEO of the entire company, moved to the head of the table with the same calm he'd shown in the rain. Karen's mask cracked. Mr. Whitmore, we weren't aware you'd be joining. Your calendar showed meetings. I cleared them. He gestured to Layla's chair. Ms. Parker, please sit. Layla's legs barely carried her back. He was the CEO the entire time. There are circumstances about yesterday that need discussion, Jace said. Karen recovered quickly. Of course. Though we were addressing Ms. Parker's lateness. Her lateness was my fault. The words hung in the air. Karen blinked. Excuse me. Yesterday morning, my car broke down on 7th Street. No signal. I had a critical meeting at 8. He paused. Ms. Parker stopped to help me. A panelist leaned forward. So she was late because she helped you. She stood in the rain 20 minutes calling roadside assistance. Signal kept dropping. She gave me her umbrella. She missed her bus because of me. The COO spoke. Did she know who you were? No. Jace looked at Layla. I was just a stranger. Karen recovered with practiced efficiency. That's commendable, Mr. Whitmore. However, our hiring standards exist for reasons. If we make exceptions based on emotional responses, we undermine our system. Continue, Jace said quietly, eyes cold. Whitmore Solutions grew because we maintain standards consistently. We hire people who understand priorities, who separate feelings from responsibilities, who don't let emotions interfere with judgment. She glanced at Layla. Helping someone is admirable, but we make difficult choices daily. We can't save everyone. Is that what you think I'm suggesting? Hiring out of pity? I'm pointing out that procedures protect company interests. If we abandon them for heartwarming stories, will collapse under sentimentality. Heavy silence. Jace looked at the panelists. Why did I stop using a company driver 6 months ago? The COO shifted. You said you wanted to simplify your routine. That's what I told reporters. Jace's jaw tightened. The truth. After last year's scandal, when 3 senior managers hired relatives and covered up misconduct, I realized I'd become too insulated. Disconnected. Karen's expression faltered. So I started driving myself, taking different routes, visiting locations unannounced, eating in the cafeteria. I wanted to understand who we are when no one thinks the CEO is watching. He turned to Layla. Yesterday I wasn't testing anyone. I genuinely needed help. But what happened showed me something I feared had disappeared. What? Layla whispered. That people still choose what's right even when it costs them. Even when no one's watching. Even when there's no reward. He looked at Karen. Ms. Parker didn't help me from emotion. She made a difficult choice, then accepted the consequences without complaint. Karen's composure cracked. Mr. Whitmore, with respect, one act of kindness doesn't qualify someone. You're right. One act doesn't. But character does. Judgment does. Integrity does. Choosing principle over self-preservation does. He walked to the window. I built this company believing good people create good work. That integrity matters more than polish. That how someone treats others when they have nothing to gain reveals who they are. He turned back. But we lost sight of that. We started hiring resumes instead of humans. Presentations over character. He returned to the table. Last year's scandal happened because we forgot the most important question, not whether someone can do the job skillfully, but whether they'll do it with integrity when no one's monitoring. Karen opened her mouth, closed it. Ms. Parker, I'd like to offer you a position, not from guilt or pity, but because yesterday you demonstrated what we desperately need: courage to do what's right even when it's hard, even when it costs you something valuable. Layla's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand this. I know. He smiled, the first real warmth. But you will. That's why you belong here. He turned to Karen, expression hardening. Effective immediately, you're reassigned. No more authority over hiring or personnel. Karen went pale. Mr. Whitmore, I've served faithfully for 3 years. And you'll continue, in a different capacity, where your strengths can be utilized without power over people's futures. The meeting ended in stunned silence. Everything Layla believed about worth and opportunity was being rewritten, but the most inspirational part of her story was still to come. The other panelists filed out quietly, carefully, avoiding eye contact with Karen, who left with her shoulders rigid and her face carefully blank. Layla remained in her chair, trying to process what had just unfolded. Her mind kept circling back to the same impossible thought: I have a job. I actually have a job because I stopped to help someone in the rain. Jace closed his laptop with a soft click. Ms. Parker, would you mind staying for a few more minutes? She nodded, not entirely trusting her voice yet. When the room had completely emptied, he moved to the chair beside hers, not at the head of the table where his position entitled him to sit, but next to her as an equal. I imagine you have questions, he said. Layla let out a breath that was half laugh, half disbelief. I don't even know where to begin asking them. Start anywhere you'd like. She looked at him carefully, really looked at him, trying to reconcile the soaked stranger from the rain with the CEO who'd just changed someone's career with a single decision. Why didn't you tell me who you were? She asked finally. Would it have changed what you did? She considered this honestly. I don't know. Maybe. If I'd known you were the CEO, I might have helped because I thought it would benefit me somehow. But I didn't know, so I just helped because it seemed like the right thing to do. Exactly. Jace leaned back slightly. For the past 6 months, I've been trying to understand who actually works at this company. Not their titles or their polished interview personas, but who they genuinely are when the performance stops. The performance, the version of themselves people present when they know they're being evaluated or judged. His expression grew more distant, as if remembering something painful. Last year, I trusted someone completely, my former chief financial officer. We'd worked together for 8 years. I thought I knew him as well as I knew anyone. He paused and Layla waited, sensing he needed to finish. It turned out he'd been stealing from the company and manipulating hiring decisions to place people who'd stay quiet about what they witnessed. When everything came to light, I realized something disturbing. I'd never actually known him at all. I'd only known the carefully constructed image he wanted me to see. Layla felt her chest tighten with recognition. She understood that particular betrayal the moment you realized someone you trusted was performing a role the entire time, and you'd been too naive or too hopeful to see through it. After that, I stopped believing in kindness. Jace continued quietly. I thought it was just another strategy, another way people manipulated each other to get what they wanted. What changed your mind? He looked at her directly. You did. You lost something genuinely valuable to help me, and you didn't ask for anything in return. You didn't even ask my name or what I did for a living. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. I know. He smiled slightly. That's precisely why it mattered so much. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the window, the city continued its endless movement. People rushing to jobs, leaving jobs, building lives in the spaces between work and home and hope. Can I ask you something personal? Layla said softly. Of course. That thing you said in the rain, about hoping someone would treat me with the same kindness. She met his eyes. Did you already know you were going to do this? Jace considered the question carefully. No. I knew I wanted to, but I didn't know if I had the courage to actually follow through. He stood and walked to the window. When I got back to the office that morning, I looked up the interview schedule, saw your name, saw that Karen had dismissed you for being late. He turned back to face her. And I had to make a choice about what kind of company I was really running. One that valued rigid procedures over actual people, or one that valued people over bureaucratic rules. You could have just given me a second interview quietly, Layla pointed out. You didn't have to explain everything in front of everyone. Yes, I did. His voice was firm. Because this company needed to hear it. Every person who works here needed to understand that we're changing direction, that we're returning to the principles we should never have abandoned. Layla stood up slowly, still clutching the folder that had survived this second chance. The same folder she'd carried through the rain yesterday, thinking her future was slipping away forever. I don't know what to say, she admitted, her voice thick with emotion she was barely containing. You don't need to say anything right now. Jace moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. But there is one thing I need to understand. What's that? When you were standing there in the rain yesterday deciding whether to help me, what made you turn around? What made you choose to miss your bus? Layla took a deep breath, feeling tears finally escape down her cheeks. Her answer would reveal a truth that would heal them both and prove that the shy girl who thought she had nothing to offer was wrong all along. Layla thought about his question. Really thought about it, letting herself remember. My mother told me something before she passed away. She said finally, her voice steady despite the tears. I was 16. We were at the grocery store and this elderly woman in front of us couldn't afford her heart medication. My mom paid for it without hesitation. On the way home, I asked her why we barely had enough money for our own bills. She smiled at the memory. She said, "Baby, the world will try to convince you that kindness is a luxury you can't afford. Don't you ever believe that lie. Kindness is the only thing that costs nothing and changes everything." Jace was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother sounds like she was very wise." She was. Layla's voice caught slightly. "I've spent 10 years trying to live by what she taught me. But honestly, some days it feels like I'm just losing. Like the world rewards people who only look out for themselves, and the rest of us just get left behind with nothing to show for our choices." "I believed that too," Jace admitted quietly, "for longer than I want to admit." "What changed for you?" "I stopped measuring success by what I could keep and started measuring it by what I could give away." He looked out at the city again. "Turns out you can build an empire and still feel completely empty inside. But you genuinely help one person really see them and help them, and suddenly you remember why any of it actually matters." 3 weeks later, Layla walked through the lobby of Whitmore Solutions, wearing her new ID badge clipped to a blazer that actually fit properly. Samuel waved enthusiastically from the security desk. "Look at you now," he said, his weathered face creasing with pride. "I told you some doors close for good reasons." "You were right," Layla said warmly. "Thank you for that tissue and those kind words that day. They meant more than you know." "Anytime, Miss Parker. That's what I'm here for." She took the elevator to the 8th floor, her floor now. Her office was modest but entirely hers. A desk positioned by the window. A computer that worked reliably. A job that paid enough for rent and groceries, and maybe eventually the kind of future she'd stopped letting herself imagine was possible. That evening, she stayed late working on a project she actually cared about. When she finally shut down her computer and gathered her things, she found Jace waiting by the elevator. "Working late already?" he asked with a slight smile. "I could say the same thing about you. Turns out being CEO means the work never really ends." They rode down together in companionable silence. When the doors opened to the lobby, Jace hesitated. "I wanted to tell you something," he said. "All right?" "That morning in the rain, when you helped me, you said you thought it would be okay even though you'd missed the interview." He looked at her directly. "It wasn't okay. You lost something real and valuable, and I need you to know that I understand that. I see the cost of what you did." Layla felt fresh tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing it, for understanding that it mattered." "You reminded me why I started this company in the first place," Jace said softly. "You reminded me that people matter infinitely more than quarterly profits. That integrity isn't just empty words we put in mission statements to sound good. And you gave me a chance when I genuinely thought I'd lost my last one," Layla replied. "So maybe we're even now." He smiled. "Not even close to even, but maybe that's all right." "Maybe it is." Outside, the city lights were beginning to glow against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, other people were making impossible choices. Other shy girls were wondering if their kindness would ever be rewarded, or if they were just fools for hoping. And in this quiet moment, two people who'd both been hurt by the world found something neither had expected: proof that goodness still mattered, that kindness still counted, that sometimes the right person sees you exactly when you most need to be seen. And maybe that's what every heartwarming story really is: two wounded people helping each other believe again that the world isn't entirely broken. 6 months later, Layla received a promotion she'd earned entirely on her own merit. Not because Jace felt obligated, not because she'd helped him that rainy morning, but because she was genuinely good at her work, and finally, after all these years, she believed it herself. The world still tries to teach us that kindness is weakness, that helping others will only hold us back, that we should protect ourselves first and worry about everyone else never. But now Layla knows the truth that her mother tried to teach her all those years ago. Kindness isn't naive. It's not foolish. It's not something only privileged people can afford. It's the bridge between who you are right now and who you're meant to become.